Hello comrades, you're watching RedIvanAirsoft and today we'll discuss main Soviet military canteens. And as a bonus, we'll talk about the Cuban one. Let's start with the most common Soviet Army canteen with a nominal capacity of 750 milliliters. Why nominal capacity? Because even my dented canteen holds 830 milliliters, not counting the neck. This canteen is a descendant of the Russian Imperial Canteen model of 1899. The Imperial Canteen, like the early Soviet ones, had the neck with a cork. In 1932, threading was introduced on the neck, and the cap was secured with 5 turns. These canteens were produced with capacity of 1 liter and 750 milliliters. From 1940, canteens were painted olive. Prior to 1940, canteens were not painted at all. It is also worth noting that during the war, glass canteens were also produced, but they were designed way before. In 1946, the 5-turn thread was replaced with the 3-turn thread. You can see it on my canteen. All post-war canteens produced in Soviet Union had this feature. However, the reparational canteens were still produced with a 5-turn thread. In the early 50s, the color was changed from olive to khaki mustard, and since then the canteen has not undergone any changes. My canteen was produced in 1955, as indicated by the stamp on the button. It was made of aluminum with a 3-turn thread and the cap on the chain. Inside there was usually a black rubber sealing gasket. In my case, it's white, and does not quite resemble a rubber, which may be a feature of the canteens produced in 1950s. There were many different types of covers for this canteen. The option from 1937, simplified wartime canteen covers, but essentially the cover familiar to us was adopted in 1941 and with minor changes has survived to this day. Here are 2 post-war covers, khaki mustard for the armed forces and the black for the navy. Mainly, especially in 60s and to this day, they were made of cotton with a plastic button. This navy one feels like flannel and has a metal button. I suspect it is from 50s or slightly earlier production. Functionally, there is no difference between these covers. The cover is put on the canteen, tightened with the drawstrings. By the way, I was also instructed to tuck the remaining bow inside the cover. This loop goes around the belt and over the canteen's neck, fastened with button. This reduces the noise from the chain, and the canteen can be removed from the belt along with the cover if needed to drink. It is not the most convenient way of carrying, but over the years I realized that it has its advantages and sometimes can be more practical than more modern covers with the snaps. This military canteen is issued to a serviceman in pair with a general-purpose mess kit, which is a copy of the German mess kit. It is very convenient and functional, but also quite bulky. So this pair is not suitable for all categories of the serviceman. Therefore, in the USSR, a combined set of the canteen and the mess kit was developed, obviously inspired by the American canteen of the World War II. According to the Stepanov's book, the prototype was developed in 1955 and the mass production began in 1958. Articles on the internet claims that the canteen was adopted for supply to the airborne forces by order number 87 of the Ministry of Defense of the USSR dated September 17, 1959. On adoption of the aluminum combined mess kit with canteen for airborne troops. This is where the designation model of 1959 comes from, but personally I could not find or read this order, so it can or cannot be true. The canteen's capacity is 1 liter, which has been verified in practice. Unfortunately, I don't know which cover was supposed to be supplied with it, but the cover from the 3-component mess kit will fit. So perhaps the same cover was issued with the earlier model. In essence, this canteen filled its purpose. As you can see, the volume of the carried items is significantly reduced, but the functionality is not greatly affected. The only complaint is the inability to close the mess kit with the food inside. Therefore, the new variation of the combined canteen, which we'll name three-component variant, was developed later, and now we'll discuss it. The three-component variant is listed on the internet as model of 1971, but there is information that the first such canteen, both aluminum and plastic, appeared as early as 1967, as they were listed in the price guide and appeared in the photographs during the events in the Czechoslovakia. The earliest variant of the plastic canteen I have ever seen in the photographs is dated 1974. And there were two types of the aluminum canteen. This set includes an aluminum or plastic canteen with capacity of 900 milliliters, a mess kit with capacity of 1 liter, and the sub-kettle with a capacity of 660 milliliters. Actual volume of the canteen itself is 950 milliliters, as practice shows. This mess kit is identical to the earlier version, a very convenient concept. With the help of sub-kettle and the handle, it can be hermetically sealed with the content inside, thus your porridge won't spill. And if you drill a small opening in the top of the mess kit, you can use a tube to capture steam when boiling dirty water on fire in the canteen. Now let's demonstrate one more time that the mess kits of the earlier and the newer models are completely identical. For example, I can take the newer mess kit and put the older canteen in it. I can even add the sub-kettle. It won't close completely, but this already works. It will not go nowhere. And the same thing with the older mess kit. I can put a newer canteen into it. That's very interesting. I even fully admit that the sub-kettle could appear first, and only then the new canteen was developed for the whole set. So maybe that's what happened. Now regarding the cover. The cover has an envelope style and a very interesting button. Unfortunately, I do not know the name of this button in English, so if you do, please leave it in the comments below. So it has two straps. If you want to take only canteen, you open the top strap, detach the canteen from the mess kit, and you can take it. And you can guide it back and close the flap. If you want to take the entire set, then you need to open the button strap and you can pull it off your belt. In my understanding, this is a very interesting system. Now, all Soviet-produced covers had this unique button. Starting from 1992, they had a regular plastic button. Also, at some point, camouflaged covers appeared. Contrary to popular beliefs, these combined mess kits were not developed exclusively for the airborne forces, but they were most often found in the airborne forces, Marine Corps, and special purpose or reconnaissance units. Now let's move on to the canteen for the hot climate. The canteen for the regions with a hot climate has less information available online. It is known that it was developed for the regions with a hot climate and it was used in Afghanistan. By format, it is essentially an East German canteen. The canteen's capacity is 1.5 liters and it is made of polyethylene. It is white and there were also transparent ones toward the end of the production. There were several types of this canteen. The early version had a cap attached to the canteen with the chain like this, like all earlier Soviet canteens. The second intermediate variant had a cap attached with a plastic clamp. But this clamp was a separate part, attached to both cap and the canteen. And the third late variant, where the clamp and the cap are one piece. This canteen was supplied to the armed forces in military covers, like this. And also it was available for sale for the tourist needs. However, commercial versions were not sold in the military covers, but in special suspension systems, like one you see on the screen right now. These harnesses also had a price imprinted. Canteens with both chains and plastic clamps were issued to the armed forces with military covers and were used in Afghanistan. And both types were also sold with the civilian suspension systems. And there even was one picture evidence of usage of the canteen in civilian configuration in Afghanistan. The civilian market canteens often, but not always, had a price stamped on them, while military ones did not. As I said earlier, this canteen consists of one 1.5 liter canteen and a plastic cup, which is attached directly to the canteen and is carried in the military cover or a special suspension system in case of the tourist canteen. There is a tightening strap to adjust the cover fit around the canteen on the cover, but in reality it is very inconvenient, so I don't use it, and on most pictures of the soldiers they don't use it too. Overall, it is a pretty cool and convenient canteen with a high volume, and I enjoy using it in airsoft, but also plastic feels so soft, so it seems that it can be easily punctured if hit. Canteen cover itself has a single strap to attach it to your belt and is pretty straightforward. My cover was produced in 1990 as set on the stamp inside, and since this particular canteen is the late version, it was also most likely produced around 1990. Now let's move to the Cuban canteen. There was a theory that this Cuban canteen is nothing else than a Soviet tourist canteen supplied to Cuba. However, in reality, this is very different. The cap format, the thread pitch, the neck diameter, and even the metal itself feels different. If I will take any Soviet canteen with a 3-turn thread, I can put the cap of it on any other Soviet canteen with a 3-turn thread. With the Cuban canteen, it does not work the same way, because again, the thread, the diameter, the size, everything is different here. So this cap won't fit this canteen, and vice versa. This cap is too small for this canteen. Therefore, I think the country where the diameter of the bullet was the same as the diameter of the cigarette would hardly want to change all its molds to create a separate tourist canteen, which then, in the complete numbers, will be sent out to Cuba. Because today, finding the Cuban canteen in the post-Soviet countries is almost impossible, unlike Soviet equipment, both military and touristic. There is an opinion that this is a Bulgarian canteen. The fact that I also acquired my canteen in Bulgaria supports this version, but so far I have not seen any pictures of the Bulgarian servicemen using such canteens. So if you have any, please send them to my email. This canteen consists of 3 elements. One 1-liter canteen, which is very light. A mess kit with an interesting way to attach the sub-kettle, and the sub-kettle. Comparing the elements of this canteen with the Soviet ones, the sub-kettles are more or less identical. The mess kits are different. Soviet one is bigger and it has a more convenient handle, which Cuban one does not have at all. The canteen itself is more similar to the Soviet earlier version than to the later one, or to American World War II canteen. The early Cuban canteen cover was very similar to the Soviet one, but in my opinion even better. There are additional buttons and a tightening strap. Over the time, Cubans switched to something more like the American covers, and later they acquired nylon cover with hook and loop closures. If you want to know more about the Cuban Army equipment, there is already a video about it on my channel, so click the link. I hope you like this video, subscribe to my channel, comment, put like. If you want to help channel financially, links are in the description, and see you next time. Bye!